entering the Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings, part 3 of the ultimate sitcom bracket. If you missed parts 1 and 2, shame on you. Go check those out after you watch this version, number 3, the West region in the bracket. And of course, you can always vote on all of these matchups. Hit the description or just follow me on Twitter at @ThePME. We'll be doing all the voting through Twitter, so that's probably the best place to find all of this. The link to the voting itself and the bracket is going to be down in the description. You can find all the audio versions on the Pat Mayo Experience podcast. But while you're here, smash the like button to the episode. Give me your winner down in the description of all of the 64 who you would have as your overall champion. And I cannot stress this enough. I didn't make the bracket. I am just talking about the bracket and who is going to move on. Sia Nejad did the bracket. So Sia, once again, defend yourself.
Well, this region is going to be really tough to defend myself in. Although I will say that the more controversial seeds were probably in the Midwest and the South, at least of the regions that we've already done. I feel like I have properly defended myself, but I am a little worried that Twitter is going to be all over me. So we'll have to wait and see there. But I have made my arguments. I will continue to make my arguments, and I stand by them.
Chris Cote, what's going on, my man? First off, we let all of the guests on the show so far through 3 episodes take issue with Sia on any of the seating. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I think for the most part, this West region is seated properly. I do have, for me, I mean, we can get into it, obviously, the details of it, but Big Bang Theory, a little overseeded for me in this tournament. Full House, maybe a little underseeded. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this, but for the most part, I agreed with most of these seedings, I will say, in this region.
In this region, sure, but you can scan the bracket and be outraged, right?
I can be outraged, yes. That's why I chose this one, because I just threw my hands up. There were a few ones in the other regions where I was like, whoa. So, Sia, but hey, this is just, Sia's just like, I got this. I'm seeding these things. It's a power move, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the job of someone who wants to do the work. Did I want to do the work? Absolutely not. I want to do the work of talking about it. That's the fun part. And the worse the seedings really, Sia. I mean, maybe this is just Galaxy brain on your part, but the shittier the bracket, the more people will talk about it and outraged they are. Thus, more people are going to watch this.
Engagement.
It's a great point. I mean, and especially after the talking about the Midwest and the South, I mean, there were some that you in particular, Ben as well. I think Adam was really on my side in most of the stuff in the South bracket, but the Simpsons, the South Park, Curb Your Enthusiasm, those are just some that kind of jump out at me where people are really going to take issue with. And of course, I have some squads a little higher, like News Radio. People are going to be shocked by that. Community, people are going to be shocked by that. I would just implore those people to go back and watch those shows because they're pretty darn great.
Yeah, well, as we found out with you and Azer, that you had the television taste of my grandma.
I like your grandma. She sounds like good people.
She does. She refers to every actor by their first name, like they're very close personal friends. Like her and Morgan, a.k.a. Morgan Freeman, best pals, as it turns out, when they go see a movie. So let's get into this. Jump right in to the very top of the bracket. The 1 seed is Seinfeld. The number 16 seed is Coach, which is a fantastic show, but obviously Seinfeld is going to win. So, Chris, I'm going to throw this to you. Is Seinfeld the number 1 overall seed of the 64?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I mean, when you look at all the number 1 seeds, it's up there for me. I mean, this is a clear-cut win for Seinfeld, but, let's not sleep on Coach here. Like, Coach, I think it's one of those shows that I watched a lot when I was young, but yet I can't really remember a specific episode. But that's not a bad thing. It's nostalgia for me. The guy Craig Nelson, the main guy, went on to do Mr. Incredible. He was the voice of Mr. Incredible. I mean, that's just more my, era. So, for me, this is, I mean, obviously, to answer your question, yes, Seinfeld is a powerhouse in this tournament, obviously.
Now, we had this discussion on the last show because Friends was the 1 seed on the other side of the bracket. If it came down to those two, who would you vote for?
Seinfeld. It's more genuinely funny to me. Friends is kind of always like, while I enjoy Friends, literally have it on mute on TBS right now because I've been crunching the film. Even I'm doing film on the whole bracket, even though I'm only doing the West. I've been doing deep dive, so I literally am watching Friends right now. But for me, Seinfeld, if you give me those, I'm going Seinfeld all day. It's just a deeper cast, and it's
funny.
more real laughs. It's real laughs.
So Sia, I mean, I think you would vote for Friends, wouldn't you?
No, it would be Seinfeld for me. Like I
Okay.
said, I think Friends, to Chris's point in terms of what he's doing right now, granted it's on mute, but I think Friends is that show you have on in the background, and Seinfeld is that show you kind of like really tune into. And for the record, the Seinfeld premise is amazing. It like literally a show about nothing. So you're just getting into the mundane, the inane, and just the whole thing is predicated on the acting and the interplay. It's perfect conceptually.
I will say, though, now, when we're just dissecting Seinfeld, obviously George Costanza, you can make the argument, a top 10 sitcom character of all time, maybe even number one, maybe top, like, he's in that conversation. Now, I have on that show an overrated character.
Kramer.
For me, Kramer. Like,
Yeah, of
that's,
course.
for me, an overrated character. Everyone will say Kramer. For me, that's a Jerry and George show. Like, Kramer is far third. Even Elaine, for me, is ahead of Kramer on that show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we were to do the Seinfeld power rankings, it's George, Elaine, Jerry, Gap, Kramer.
Oh, good.
It's 100% true. And Chris, that's really amazing what you just did, because literally just the last episode with Ben Raza, I made this statement. I'm curious where you stand on this, because you didn't get to evaluate the How I Met Your Mother bracket, but I stated, and almost to your exact words, what the different character. I think Costanza is a top 10 sitcom character all time, but I said that Barney Stinson unequivocally is a top 10 sitcom character of all time. What say you?
I agree with that. I mean, if we're real, like, I think he's in that 5 to 10 range. Like George Costanza, I think you can make the arguments in that top 5. Barney, I'd have to like do this. I'm not prepared, but I don't think it's crazy. Barney is by far the leader on that show, and of that era of sitcoms, a great character. So I don't know if he's top 10. I'd have to crunch, do my big power rankings, which we should probably do next, because that's a great topic in itself. But I'm not fighting back on that, without really studying it.
I think that you're close to like fringe top 10 in that conversation when you're talking about that, Sia, because we would have to go through everyone. Do animated characters count as a part of this?
It's such a good question. For me, like my instant reaction is no.
Okay.
It's almost unfair to the real people to have the animated characters in there. If it did, I think it would just skew the numbers so much. There would only be one that I would even put in there, and it would be Brian from Family Guy.
You would
Outside
have
of that,
Brian
I'd go
from
with actual
Family Guy
humans.
over Cartman or Randy Marsh?
Not even close. It's not a close call.
Fucking an outrage. That is the worst take I've ever heard.
I thought Stewie's the main guy. Like, I would go Stewie and Peter Griffin before Brian.
No, but Brian is really the brains behind it, and he's funny. It's just Brian is more dynamic than both Stewie and Peter.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we get to this next region and get to talk about Family Guy and how it's like half trash.
It's full awesome.
So yeah, but I guess Barney Stinson, if you just did real life actors, like if I gave you a toss up, a coin flip, would you rather have Frasier, Niles, or Barney Stinson?
Okay, so you're asking me first. I would go Frasier, then Niles, then Barney, because I think Frasier and Niles are two of the best sitcom characters of all time. And I honestly think Niles is on the level of Frasier, if not a touch above. They are on the same playing field. Niles is incredible.
Chris?
Which one are we doing here?
We're just talking about Frasier. Like if you'd had Niles and Frasier against Barney Stinson, which way would you go?
I go Barney. For me, just because I like How I Met Your Mother. Frasier was a show for me that I watched. Like, that's why I was glad that I didn't do that region, because like I appreciate Frasier. I'm not going to sit down here and crush Frasier, but for me, I was not a huge Frasier guy growing up. So for me, Barney, that's just my wheelhouse. How I Met Your Mother is one of my favorites.
It's funny. We had the Frasier discussion on the last show, despite Frasier not being a part of any of the shows we've discussed in the bracket so far. That is the very last episode of this. But all of us kind of agree, except for Ben, because he's sort of an anomaly with all of this. He's like an alien. But Frasier was a show that you saw when you were younger. And we're like, this is an old person show. But now I'm old and I really love it.
Mm-hmm.
I should go back, honestly, because that is the kind of way. And we're going to get to it. Cheers, kind of in that category for me as well. Like a lot of old people in my life tell me Cheers is great. Didn't do a lot of watching it growing up. It was one of those ones that I watched as a little kid. But yeah, like but those shows, you still appreciate those shows. The shows that you kind of watched when you were young, even though you don't really remember them. Like I have a soft spot in my heart for those type of shows.
Well, see, let's get to Cheers. It's the 2 seed in this region. It's up against Living Single, which I actually have no idea what that is. So that's fun. I assume Cheers is going to win, but Cheers is unfairly placed in this bracket because it's the number one show of the 80s. It might be the best sitcom of all time, but it's not going to do well with the voting for this because everyone who's going to vote in this is going to be like, I mean, best case 50 and under, probably 35 and under.
Yeah, I mean, Cheers is in a tough spot here. And honestly, there could be the argument that, you know, if you're going to include Cheers in here, you got to include some other shows of that era, at least the era that it started in, which is 1982. It went from 1982 to, I believe, 1993. So it's an older show. It's unfortunately, it's going to be affected by recency bias. But also, I mean, Seinfeld was probably ultimately a better show than Cheers. And there's some shows here that I think they don't measure up to Cheers, but that are really good shows. This is a really good region. So Cheers is great. The characters from Cheers, I think we all like still remember, even if we're, you know, Chris Cote, you're a little bit younger than me. You're still
I know the Norm reference. Like I don't know the show, but I know Norm.
Cliff Clavin, Sam Malone, Woody. Like if you were to just see that, like even a still picture of them at the Cheers bar, you'd be like, oh, I remember that guy. Those guys are really funny. Cheers has that going for it.
And we have to give Cheers a little extra credit just for birthing another 1 seed in this tournament. Like
Exactly.
that just, it needs to get extra bonus points just for that fact.
Frasier's the best spinoff ever, right?
Oh yeah.
I don't even know what's second.
Joey?
Amazing. Sorry, Joey.
One of the Blackish 3 shows that got spun off from that?
Are any of them still? I think those were short runs, or maybe they're still going or in production. That's a good question.
Now,
I kept getting targeted ads for How I Met Your Father, and I think that lasted like 2 episodes.
Yeah, not good. Can I just make a case? Obviously, this is Cheers' matchup here. I'm not saying that Living Single needs to beat Cheers here, but I probably watched Living Single more than I did Cheers growing up. And I need to, like, Queen Latifah obviously is Queen Latifah, but you have Sinclair and Max, 2 great, like, side characters on that show. And one of the most riveting people, I think his name, I had to look up his name, T.C. Carson. He played Kyle. He had, like, he was the very deep, like, hello. Like, and just something about, anytime that guy was on the screen, I was riveted by him. I didn't take my eyes off him. So I just wanted to give a little flowers to Living Single. 5 seasons, a quick series, still makes the tournament. Solid, doesn't really have a chance in this tournament, but a solid conference champion. We got it's a deserving tournament team, Living Single.
Agree.
Well, let me throw this back at you then, Chris, because you say 5 seasons, short run. When you're judging these shows and what you want to vote for, is it peak or is it longevity? Or is it a mix?
Yeah, I think it's like it you know when you see it, like the popular thing. Like it's like I know a tournament team when I see it. 5 like you need to have a little something special if you're going to get in this tournament with 5 seasons. I know Wonder Years, I believe, has only been around 5 similarly length. But for the most part, most of the sweet spot is 8 or 9 seasons, I've learned in most of these tournament teams. But like you said, I think you want to have a substantial amount of seasons, but if you're a solid show, you can make the tournament with 5. I think 5's the minimum, though, to your point.
So just trying to think about it. Like when we do this one day for best dramas of all time, Succession's now ending after 4 seasons. How does that like measure up against the other peak TV stuff ever? Like The Wire is 5 seasons, Succession is 4 seasons. I think Sopranos is 7, 8 because they had the split season, same as Breaking Bad. Mad Men is 7.5 seasons as well. Do we give more leeway to something like drama because there's only so much story to tell?
Well, real quick. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't actually, believe it or not, I don't watch Succession. I watched a couple episodes in the beginning. I understand it's a great show, but that's also an hour-long show, right? So
you're probably still like begging for This Is Us to come back on, right? With your TV tastes.
This Is Us is a good show. Me and your grandmother should chat. But no, I mean, I just honestly the first few shows of Succession, I just wasn't drawn in at all. I think it probably got better from there, but. It wasn't for me. I'll probably end up going back and watching, but keep in mind that's an hour show, so it's different, right? Because number of episodes, number of time on screen versus like the 30-minute variety. I think you can give some credence to that hour-long type show if it's a shorter amount of season.
The more I think about this, I think you're right. I think it's more peak than like if a show has like if it reaches a level where everyone's talking about it, like it can be an all-time show. Like you gotta have like it. The longer shows obviously have a better chance of being in this conversation, but if you have a strong peak, all it takes is 2 good seasons and you can be in the conversation.
And this was my case for Arrested Development when we talked about that bracket. Like, I truly believe the first 2.5 seasons of Arrested Development are essentially peak comedy. for a TV show. And then it just, it went away. Then it went to Netflix. They couldn't get everyone back. So they had to film everyone individually. Like, I didn't count those seasons. Like, those don't matter to me. But I can just throw on any of those earlier Arrested Developments and just fucking laugh my ass off the entire time.
And people are pretty critical of the first few seasons of Seinfeld, right? Like, they found their groove, but... Right? Am I mistaken? Am I
Yeah, like, the first season of Seinfeld, I think it's only 4 episodes. It's like the first season of The Office is 6, and they're like remakes of the British ones, and it just doesn't work with the American characters. The first season of Parks and Rec is kind of exactly the same way. So, I mean, it's no different than what Sia just said about Succession, or hell, even The Wire. Like, the amount of people that I've talked to that struggled to get through the first 4 episodes of The Wire, and then they did, and it was like, oh, okay. Succession's kind of on that same path right now. It takes like 6 for Succession to really click in. It's like, oh, this is now like a different show, and this is amazing.
Another one of that ilk, and I'm just going to drama because you mentioned Succession. I don't know if you all have ever seen the show Bloodline, but it's only 3 seasons, and it takes 3 to 5 shows to really invest in there before you really get. It's a character development type thing at the beginning. It's one of the best drama series I've ever seen, and it's only 3 seasons.
And it just fell off. Like, it wasn't like they crescendoed, and like it wasn't like they ended this. Like, it was just like they did their 3rd season where they left some like open things, and it was like, and we're not coming back for a 4th. It was like, no.
Right.
And when we talk about the peak TV shows and the peak drama, when that bracket finally gets out, we're going to have a different discussion too, because you talked about like bell curving things, Sia, when thinking about this, where a network TV show, is held to a different standard than a cable show, where you can talk about whatever the hell that you want, and you work within those parameters to make it a good show. I think the argument for the dramas is you're going to have these, like even something like The West Wing, for example. Whether you like The West Wing or not, I don't think that is really matters. It was a very decorated show. I really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the later seasons after Sorkin. But when you have to fill out an order of 24 episodes in a season that are an hour long versus 8 episodes, that degree of difficulty I feel like is much harder.
Oh, I totally agree. 100% agree. I think West Wing, by the way, I like that show too. I think Aaron Sorkin shows are interesting. I love the dialogue in those shows, which is why shows like West Wing I was super fond of. I would almost like steal some of the dialogue from it in terms of my own mannerisms, my own manner of speaking. But yeah, I totally agree. 8 versus 24, it's a huge difference.
I tried to steal Aaron Sorkin stuff too, but as it turns out, I cannot walk and talk at the same time. So it just led to a lot of injuries. And he also did The Newsroom. He doesn't get a pass for that because that show is fucking terrible.
That show had moments, I thought, but that's just me.
I mean, there's nothing like building a show, a news show, based on what the outcome already is and holding the best moral point of view of people in the moment. There's just, nothing more authentic than that.
No, you're right about the righteousness of the show, how it was just like, okay, no, we get it. But I thought the deeper issue there, I know we're getting a little far afield, is that they were talking about how cable news has to respond not to the news directly, but to those who influence them in giving the news, to money interests and things of that nature. I thought it did a good job of exposing that to some degree. Although you're right, there was a lot of it that was a little much.
Back to Cheers. Why do you think it is that Seinfeld we still hold in such high regard through syndication, everything like that? I understand. But as you pointed out, like it started in 1989. Cheers did run itself into the 90s. Was it because Cheers wasn't in syndication the same way that Seinfeld was? The reason why people remember Seinfeld not only so fondly, but just remember it in general?
Well, I think some of it is recency bias. And Chris, I'd love your opinion here too, because you're younger than me. Listen, a show begins in 1982. Most of the people who are listening to this, not all, weren't watching when it debuted, like they might have been with Seinfeld
when it was debuted.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's the whole point, right? Like if you watched Cheers and you're listening to this or watching this, there's a good chance you watched it after its run was over, that you were in the sort of the Seinfeld Friends wheelhouse. And then you were like, oh, I keep hearing about this show Cheers. If you caught it then, you probably didn't invest in watching every single season.
I don't know why, because in terms of just like the public's perception of these shows, I hold them in similar, like Cheers and Seinfeld, but for some reason, is it just the 5 years later? Like it seems like, Seinfeld just started a little later. I don't know. Like maybe they just got the deal with syndication that Cheers didn't. But you are so right though that I still can rewatch Seinfeld and it kind of holds up more than Cheers. But I don't sitting here have an explanation for that. It's an odd one, honestly.
And even when you turn on the TV and start flipping through the channels, like if you have TBS on right now, just give it a few seconds. Seinfeld's going to be on soon.
Yeah.
But Cheers isn't.
Yeah.
It's strange that way.
It is
but
weird.
Cheers is going to be moving on here. Let's go just above that. We have Family Ties, a 7 seed, and a late entry because you did not have the League in this bracket already, Sia. But right. I have a hot take. I do not like the League. I do not find it that funny.
Ooh. See, I found it really funny. Chris, what are your thoughts on the League? Because I know, we talked about this show back when it was airing, and I just thought, first of all, the fantasy football angle was great, but also I thought some of the characters were just laugh out loud funny.
I tend to disagree with you here. I was never a big League guy. I tried to watch it, tried to get into it. Fantasy football, right up my alley. But so yeah, I mean, I would go Family Ties here. Also before my time, but I've definitely watched a lot as a kid. I actually think I've watched very similar amounts of these two shows, Family Ties and The League. But I got to give the edge to Family Ties here if we're just pitting these two up against each other. It just, I think as we move on in time, Family Ties is going to be, The League has obviously it's FX, it's the same station as Always Sunny. And it just has that vibe. It has that feel to it. I don't know what that is exactly. It just has that feel to it. So that part I like. And I like Nick Kroll. I like some of the cast. The Ran and ZZ stuff with 9/11 also makes it weird with the League. So, we don't have to get into that.
Oh, but yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Anyways, but Family, for me in this matchup, I don't have a lot of experience with either of these shows, but it's Family Ties for me.
It's Family Ties for me too. I think maybe we're coming at this from exactly the same angle, Chris, but there are certain shows, like everyone I know that works in media loves Sports Night. We talk about Aaron Sorkin shows. Sports Night is one that everyone really seems to like. But everyone that I know in media, especially sports media in general, tends not to like the League, where people who aren't do. So maybe it's just us working in the business just kind of separates us from all of this. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know. It always seemed like for me, I needed a little bit more from it. I liked the premise of it. I liked the characters, but it's just it just always missed a little for me, the League. I don't know. I didn't get it.
Let's
I think the characters, I was just going to say, I think the characters make that show ultimately. Guys like Rafi and Rodney Ruxin and Andre, Dr. Andre, I think they end up making the show, but which to your point, maybe that means that the writing, the show itself isn't very good.
So Seinfeld is moving on against Coach, and it will play the winner of Everyone Loves Raymond and Parks and Rec. This is, I don't know if it's a generational divide, a taste divide, whatever it might be, but Everyone Loves Raymond was a gigantic show. Parks and Rec was not, but became beloved. Well, I mean, towards the end of the run, well after the fact. I much prefer Parks and Rec. It's a very easy vote for me. But does anyone want to make the case for Everyone Loves Raymond?
Well, I bet Chris does.
Well, you see, this is a very tough one for me, guys. This is a little look at me Louie situation here. See, I'm related to Ray Romano, and Mike Schur is just a dear friend. So it's hard for me to make a call here. If I'm being honest, though, I'm going to go with, you're going to think that I'm doing the family thing here. I'm going to fight. I'm going to make the argument for Everyone Loves Raymond. Let me just say on the front end, Parks and Rec is one of my favorite shows of all time.
Doesn't sound like it.
I know,
sure
but I'm just saying, I just want to, all right, you know what? I'm going to do the thing I did with Living Single then. Fine. Parks and Rec can win this. I get it. Parks and Rec deserves to win this. But Everyone Loves Raymond had a time, man. That this show reared me. Okay, this show, I just like to say that ridiculous phrase every once in a while. I blame the sarcasm on that show. The way Ray and his wife in that show talk to each other, I blame for the way I live my life. I am, the way they are on that show, that's the way I am with my wife, and I blame that show for it. I just love, the sarcastic relationship between Ray and his wife on that show. It's just, it's my, 96 to 05, this is my influential years here. So for me, this show just has a special place in my heart, probably more than any sitcom. Just in my high school years, coming home, watching this show, I love, even before he became a family member, I love Everyone Loves Raymond.
Another one that TBS got a hold of and just aired nonstop.
Yeah.
So never had problems finding it. Sia, where are you going with this?
It's a close one for me, which is why they're seated, in my opinion, appropriately here at 8 and 9. Pat on the back to the committee there. I'm going to go with Parks and Rec. I wasn't a big Parks and Rec guy, as it turns out. In other words, it's not that I didn't think it was funny. I just never really got around to Parks and Rec. There are so many carbon copies of Parks and Rec at this point, and when it came out, I just wasn't super interested in it. But going back and watching it, it is funny. But some of the shows with similar setups, I prefer those shows. I think maybe Is it Brooklyn Nine-Nine we talked about last show with Ben? I mean, it's almost, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong.
It's The
just a
Office,
similar
right? It's
comedic
The Office.
setup.
It's the joke and then look at the camera. It's like that move.
Right. And it's all in one setting for the most part, or, whatever. So Parks and Rec on the scale of that is lower than all of those types of shows, but I would actually put it ahead of Everyone Loves Raymond.
Can I know I don't want to hog the floor here.
Go for it.
Everyone Loves Raymond. Starting lineup, if we're doing the basketball analogies, Raymond, Diane Heaton. Is that Diane? Did I get that right? Is it Michael Keaton? It's Diane Heaton. I'm sorry. I don't know what
Heaton?
What I say? Wow, I just combined.
Yeah, I mean, if we do vault like Diane Keaton mid-70s like Woody Allen movie Diane Keaton into Everyone Loves Raymond, maybe we got a different case on our hands here.
I combined Diane Keaton, Patricia Heaton, and Michael Keaton. It was like anyways, his goddamn wife, whoever the hell she is, Brad Garrett, and the parents. Those five. That's starting five. Who's the weak link there? Like, name even Seinfeld. Like, name a better starting five. All five of those characters on Everyone Loves Raymond were great characters. Their bench is terrible. There's nobody else on the show. It's a terrible bench. But as far as starting five, I don't even know if maybe Everyone Loves the Mother Show. God, I'm having a moment.
How I Met Your Mother.
How I Met Your Mother. Great starting lineup. Starting lineup.
I'll give Parks and Rec. True. I mean, let's go through their five. You got Amy Poehler. You got Ron Swanson. You have Aziz Ansari, Aubrey Plaza, and Chris Pratt. Like, those five are fire. And then
Jerry. They got a deep bench.
And that's a deep bench too.
That's a full team. I'm just mean like the starting five though, and Everyone Loves Raymond for me.
I'm kind of taking issue with the Raymond parents versus Costanza's parents. I'd actually go Costanza's parents there.
But are they in the starting lineup? You don't see them as much.
I mean, don't they share? Or is that on King of Queens? King of Queens is a spinoff that's actually pretty good.
King of Queens, I'm like, we can get to that. That's in this bracket.
That
right?
is in this bracket.
I'm a big King of Queens guy.
Well, let's talk about King of Queens. King of Queens is going up against one of my all-time favorite shows. So I'm not voting for King of Queens because Scrubs is amazing, but the floor is yours for King of Queens. It's okay.
I think it's perfectly seated here. It's one of those teams. It's not a great team, but they win their conference every year. They're like Iona. Or whatever, like one of these small teams that never has a chance, but you see them every year in the tournament because they dominate their conference. It's one of those ones, it's bad comedy. It's one of those ones where if you take the laugh track off, like Big Bang Theory, it's probably terrible. Ouch. Like, it's one of those things, but it's still a good show, a deep roster, to your point, the Jerry Stiller, great on that show. One of the all-time worst characters, though, in that show is Garrett, played by Gary Valentine. It's Doug's brother. Kevin James's brother in the show is the guy Garrett. It's one of my least favorite characters in the history of sitcoms. I just like, that's a little nugget for you guys. But overall, King of Queens, good show.
That just brings up something. Sorry, I'm going to keep going afield here, but my least favorite character of any sitcom in this 64, and people may disagree with me here, but it's Phoebe from Friends. Am I way off base? Am I not in on the joke with Phoebe?
I think that you're just not in on the joke.
Okay, fair.
I'm with you. It's like, we get it, Phoebe. Like, I wasn't a big fan of that character either. I'm with you, Sia.
I think saying the worst character out of the 64 is a bit difficult, only because you have max exposure in a show that's a one seed. You hold this show in such high regard, and you don't like this one part of it. I'm sure if we went through this list, I mean, we could find something.
Yeah, it's like calling that penalty on John Rahm a few years back because the camera's always on him. So you're always going to be able to find a penalty with him. Sorry for the tortured golf analogy there. But yeah, I just think Phoebe was just I understand why you write that character in, but I'm not a big fan. I also thought Lily in How I Met Your Mother was a pretty bad, not a bad character. I thought she did a kind of a bad job. I mentioned that last episode.
Aggregated headlines. Sia hates women characters.
Ouch.
Yeah,
oh man, I'm gonna have to overcompensate now. I did mention. Actually, I forgot Claire Huxtable when we were talking about that subject matter. So that's actually not a good example. Darn, I'm really gonna need to make up for this. Carry on.
Well, do we want to talk about Scrubs? Are we all big fans of Scrubs here?
Oh yeah, I mean, what can you say bad about Scrubs? I want to give a shout out to, while you love Zach Braff and Faison, the doctor though, John McKinley and Neil Flynn though, like for me, those ancillary characters, not ancillary, but side characters are really the secret sauce of that show.
And when
totally
when you talked about the top 10 characters, Sia, I would have Dr. Cox over Barney Stinson.
Ooh,
that's fair.
See?
I'm not. I disagree. And Chris, go ahead. I disagree, but I get where you're going with that. I think he's an excellent character. I wouldn't have him in my top 10 personally.
I agree. I'm just gonna echo. Like I agree. He might be the best. He's the best character on that show. To your point, I think is what you're like. But over Barney, yeah. See, I'd have to see. I want to do this game now. You guys are just making me want to like do a power rankings of sitcom characters.
Aunt Vivian. I got to put it out there now. The first Aunt Vivian, because I have to now that you've aggregated me, I loved the first Aunt Vivian. As a dramatic person in a comedic series, she's one of the best. Okay, I'm overcompensated. Keep going.
If we were to do this, the best sitcom characters from each of these shows, we don't need to go show by show, but if you were picking Fresh Prince, would it be Uncle Phil, Will, or Carlton?
As a comedy. Like in
as a sitcom character.
Sitcom character. I mean, it's
you
Will,
gotta go.
but
yeah,
all three of them are so good in like slightly nuanced ways.
I think Carlton is the most comedic of that, like the guy that makes me laugh the most of that crew. But I don't know if he's the best. Like it's just got to be Will. But
I mean,
that's a tough one.
I mean, it wasn't Carlton being all that funny when he was on Speed. Now was it?
Good call.
Or when Will had the gun.
Oh yeah.
Very serious moments on Fresh Prince.
Hey, go back and watch when not Uncle Phil, when Will's father came back into the picture that one episode and then like left him again in that conversation. Like that, I don't think people understood that Will had those chops in that moment, or Uncle Phil for that.
That clip is all over my social media algorithm. I must see that clip once a month, just when I'm like, scrolling on Instagram.
Epic.
Are you a big Shaft fan? You get some Richard Roundtree in your life?
Oh, what?
It's a great casting choice for Will's dad, having Shaft play him.
Oh, yeah.
All right, what else are we going here? So, I mean, I don't think we need to pontificate all that much about Scrubs. Scrubs is amazing, and we talk about like a deep roster type show. This goes like 13 deep on the show. The writing is amazing. We talked about Spin City a little bit before. Bill Lawrence graduates from that to Scrubs, then goes on to do Cougar Town after that. He does Ted Lasso now. So, I mean, we didn't really include any of the newer shows into this, and I think that's fine, Sia, because now we're into, especially in part of the fun, I think, of doing this bracket is almost what we talked about with the syndication factor a little bit earlier. And even things like The Office, Parks and Rec, and Friends getting that second life at the very beginning of Netflix almost coincides with how when we grew up and you would see things on TBS or whatever it was almost the same thing to a newer generation where, I mean, if you don't have Apple, then you're not watching Ted Lasso. And that's just, people haven't seen it.
That's right. And I think there's an argument to be made, not to get too deep here, but some of these shows that we grew up with in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, whether we realize it or not, kind of molded who we are. I think some of these dads like Uncle Phil, I think they quietly kind of like taught us some lessons that we carry forward, whether it's a father figure or someone else. So you're not going to get that as much from a show that was, aired or began airing within the last few years. So I think it's appropriate to kind of leave those off for now. And then maybe we revisit in a couple of years when we do this again.
To that point, I grew up like I now have a daughter who's 5 years old. Like 7-8 years ago, I was like, I one day want to be the dad that Phil Dunphy is. Like that is who I would like to be one day. Is that, and I'm getting there. I think I'm close.
I see. I would throw this back as if there's any show that influenced a generation of people, it's clearly The Simpsons. It's just the way that we talk is how The Simpsons talked. The references we make are those references.
I'm always backpedaling into bushes when I feel awkward.
So. We have to watch it for thorns, but other than that, I think you're probably pretty good. Back to this bracket. So we got Scrubs moving on. We have Who's the Boss against Wings. Two shows that I think are probably before all of our times.
Yeah. I need to just go to the restroom now and let you guys handle this. I've literally never seen a clip of Wings. Who's the Boss? I know Tony Danza. I know, it's about, he hires a nanny and then she lives with them and they fall in love, right? Isn't that kind of the premise? Am I way off on that? That literally, this matchup, I could not be any more useless on. So you guys take it away.
I am. Well,
real quick. I mean, Who's the Boss was 84 to 92. Wings was 90. It says I saw 90 to 97. I think it might have been earlier than that, but certainly late 80s, early 90s for that one. Listen, Who's the Boss is one of those where I thought it had some iconic characters. By the way, he was kind of a housekeeper, I guess, Tony Maselli, and he brought in his daughter Samantha Maselli, who was, I think, kind of an iconic, one of the more iconic like female child actors of her time. Angela, who is actually the boss? Is it Mona? Is it Angela? Is it Tony? I mean, it was a good comedic show. It didn't have much value beyond that. It's a tough matchup with Wings. Wings is interesting. I think it's the same writers as Cheers and Frasier.
Yeah, well, Frasier appears on Wings.
Does he really? I actually didn't know
yeah.
that. So you're getting some of that like kind of highbrow, unique writing that kind of withstands the test of time, like you would with Frasier. I think Wings is a little too niche, so I think most people will just check the Who's the Boss box. But I think people who watch Wings are like, oh, that was a really funny, creative show.
I would hope that they would, because we're three people who have said we haven't watched it. I would assume most of the people here have not watched Wings who are watching or listening to the show right now. So if you did invest the time to watch 8 seasons of the show, I would hope that you like it.
What's the basis of the 6th seed though, Sia? If you didn't like, why did it like? What did you read about it, or like, was it just extremely popular? Like, what made it a 6th seed if none of us have seen it?
Well, I've seen the show, and I've seen plenty of episodes of the show. You're right; it's probably too high. Like looking at this board, I think we could probably swap it with Everyone Loves Raymond or Parks and Rec, but it's just a unique show. I think the committee maybe overemphasized writing. More like maybe more than just like the.
I love you saying the committee.
Yeah, so the committee. At the end of the day, it's seated too high. But I think if you go back and watch the show, they had some unique characters on that show as well. It's kind of a slow moving comedic outfit every 30 minutes, but it's a good show. It's a solid show. It's overseated here. Committee got this one wrong.
When people vote in the bracket, it's going to turn out like a March Madness thing where Who's the Boss as an 11 seed is like the play-in 11, where you get like UNC or USC or some like big time school, and the 6th seed is a good team, but one that no one really knows anything about. So it's sort of like a mid-major that one that's much better than the other mid-majors. And then people are just going to look at it when they're doing their bracket and be like, oh, I'm going to pick the team that I know, and that's going to be Who's the Boss.
Yeah, you're right.
So other matchups, Wonder Years against Full House. I can honestly say I do not like either of these shows. So floor is yours.
Go ahead, Chris.
This is an infuriating matchup for me. This is your clear 12 beats a 5 matchup for me. I mean, I grew up watching Wonder Years. I'm not going to sit here and criticize it. Had a great intro song. Watch what you do with them. You know, it was a classic
Very
all-time
nice.
theme song. Narrated by Marv from Home Alone, so we're going to give him some points for that. But overall, Full House is just, if you talk of anyone of my era, coming up in my, or maybe even a little older than me, of all these shows here, if we just say the title of these shows, Full House, you know what it does? It makes you feel. It makes you feel something. People grew up my age, they care about Full House. I don't know why. It wasn't even that good. It wasn't that funny, but it just means something to us.
I'm with you. I experienced the same thing. I just don't find it to be good. So that's a real problem.
Well, so that's the thing. That's what really comes down to Wonder Years being the 5 seed. Like Full House was trash TV. I mean, it genuinely was, but it did make you feel like kind of good. And there were so many different characters. Some of them were funny, some not so much. It was one of those sort of comfort shows of its time. But Wonder Years actually had a lot to it. If you go back and watch, even if you watch like maybe 3 to 4 episodes, you don't have to watch the whole thing. Chris mentioned it was only 5 seasons, but it packed a punch. I mean, you got this kid, and the narration I think is unique too. I don't think a ton of shows were doing that, but you got this little kid's perspective who, isn't necessarily a popular kid. He's living in a lower middle class household where his dad and mom have their flaws, his brother has flaws, and it's the classic what happens in a teenager's life, like falling in love with Winnie Cooper, or trying to deal with, fitting in at school and trying to deal with the issues at home. It really kind of brought you in, and I think kind of like made you feel what Fred Savage, what his character was feeling. And so I just thought it was a really unique and well done comedy / drama.
Paul Pfeiffer, all-time classic best friend character from Paul Pfeiffer. And I'm with you. There was you got something out of, I mean, I was a little too young for it, but you could tell like the conversations with his dad and Kevin late in like each episode, like there would be like a lesson, which is actually similar to Full House. Full House would always kind of bring it home towards the end. The music would start. It's like, come here, sit down. Like, come here, sit on my lap. Let me teach you the lesson of this episode. So both of these shows kind of had that aspect of it. But for me, this is a 12-5 upset. I respect Wonder Years, but Full House for me, it lifts the hairs on my arms, is what Full House does.
When we get to the voting, I think Chris is going to be proven correct on this, that Full House is going to win this matchup, Sia.
Yeah, because it has the name recognition more than anything. And honestly, the one thing about Wonder Years, it might just be miscast in this bracket altogether. Because now that I think about it, this is probably more a drama than it is anything else. So it's one of those things where if you're actually looking at it strictly from a comedic standpoint, which you don't need to do, dramatic elements should be kind of thread woven in here a little bit. But I think you're right. Full House is going to win. But I think Wonder Years, again, whether you're looking at it from a dramatic standpoint or a comedic standpoint, great show.
Well, I mean, if we're just going to miscast shows that are in the bracket, we could take out Wonder Years as a 5 seed, insert the Larry Sanders Show as a 5 seed. Now watch it march all the way to the Elite Eight.
I debated the Larry Sanders Show. See, when the committee was putting together the shows, the thought was, okay, let's not use some of the niche cable shows, but we ended up doing that. I ended up doing that. And so Larry Sanders ended up just kind of being on the outside looking in. Now, I did put in the Gary Shandling Show to almost pay homage to Larry Sanders. And for the record, Larry Sanders doesn't even feel like a sitcom,
No,
even
it doesn't.
though it is.
It doesn't feel like a sitcom, but if the Wonder Years isn't a sitcom, we just put in, because we need something that's going to beat Big Bang Theory here. I think Chris and I are aligned with this. And nothing, it has like the easiest draw for a 4 seed until it's going to get absolutely annihilated by Seinfeld.
Agreed. I mean, see, I'm sensing by the way you kind of reacted when I took a shot at. You're a Big Bang guy, huh? That's
Yes
shocking
and
to
no.
me. That is shocking to me.
It is. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying because it's a little like 2.5 men-ish. It's a little like on the
I prefer
nose.
2.5 Men.
Oh, wow.
Give me Sheen.
No.
Give me Sheen, man. Sheen rules.
Well, we need to come up with a name for this type of comedy where it's like bad comedy, where it's like it's just so ham-handed, like over, like where it's like every conversational line in this show is just a setup for a joke. Like, you know, I was watching some scene where it's just like, yeah, Penny, like Raj, like it was. I don't know, like it was just, I don't know, Big Bang Theory, and I think my wife's obsessed with Big Bang Theory, so that was like, I think that affects. Like I've like always resented it because I'm always like having this debate with her. So this is very personal for me, Big Bang Theory, but I don't know, just not for me.
So the thing, go ahead.
It's the 4 seed, and it's taken on Mad About You, which I did discover, and I think we all did, that it came back at some point. My wife watched it. She loves Mad About You.
Oh, well, fantastic. I think she'd get along with your grandmother quite well as well. I assume that's the case.
Big Bang Theory went on like 3 or 4 seasons too long too. Like
that's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 2 things here. One, you're right about the ham-handed comedy, but that is an additional layer on top of what the show was at its outset, which was these extremely socially awkward, hyper intelligent people that like you could almost empathize with, like, oh man, that guy's like so awkward, but it's like funny awkwardness. And so then you layer the comedy on top of that, and it becomes a show that I think actually bridges the gap from 2.5 Men to like a more quality comedy. And so that's sort of where I'm going with Big Bang Theory. But I agree with you, and this is something we mentioned or I mentioned on another show. Once Big Bang started to introduce, and all shows go through this progression, unfortunately, like the storylines and the Amy Farrah Fowlers and the Bernadettes, and they sort of started to dominate some of the storylines, it took away from the heart and soul of what it was. So, I mean, if you're talking about the first 4 or 5 seasons of Big Bang Theory, yeah, it's ham-handed. I still think it's really funny.
It became too relationship based, you know,
Right.
like at the beginning, it was just like these nerds trying to get through life.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became like, you know, let's get married. Let's, yeah, I'm with you.
I feel like it's the live action version of the same way that I talk about Family Guy, where, yeah, the first few seasons, fine. And then it just becomes the same thing over and over. Then the quality just dips off. Feel the same way about Family Guy.
Do you not give the show a little bit of deference, Pat, because the best Canadian band of all time wrote the theme song?
Oh my God. Maybe you need to expand your knowledge of Canada, pal.
The top 3 Canadian bands.
Ever?
Sure. First ones that come to mind.
The Guess Who? Rush? And I mean, I would say Our Lady Peace, but that's me. And that's like my exact wheelhouse. But I don't think that
Our Lady Peace for sure. Our Lady Peace would be in my top 3.
I mean, something
Innocent,
to do with
clumsy.
Neil Young, like not Neil Young by himself. And when he joins bands, obviously it's not an all Canadian band, but he's Canadian.
Speaking of Canadian bands, is Big Bang Theory the Nickelback of
Yes.
TV shows?
Yes.
Because it's one of these shows that like everyone like doesn't think is good, but yet has this like, but people kind of secretly will watch it. You know what I mean? It's like I don't like Nickelback, but they got a couple bangers. So it's like I feel like Big Bang Theory is what Nickelback is.
And I feel like there's a bunch of shows on this list that are like that. Like, I kind of feel like Everyone Loves Raymond is like that. I kind of feel like Two and a Half Men is like that. They're those type of shows, which they're fine, but they're not great.
I feel like Everyone Loves Raymond was a little, but I'm with you. They had like, it was just kind of every conversation was like a setup for a joke. Like it's a little ham-handed. I'm kind of with you, but like for me, Everyone Loves Raymond was the best of those. Like faked it the best.
Well,
better
I mean,
than those two.
I'll throw a more controversial take in here. I will throw Friends into that as well, because Friends is still written exactly that same way. It's just set up, punchline, set up, punchline. It's the entire show.
But you have to give some deference to the casting. Like they just did a good job of
fine.
Like, yeah, but they were funny. Like they were naturally
Matthew
funny
Perry's
without
funny,
the lines.
sure.
Ross is funny.
No, Chandler's
Matt-
funny.
Chandler's funny. Chandler's
think-
funny. Ross is kind of funny.
I like Ross's shtick of like, just like, I don't know. Ross I liked all, like, I'm with you. I like them all. Well, Jennifer Aniston, like, isn't really bringing, like, I thought Courtney Cox is funny.
Yep.
Phoebe and Jennifer Aniston, like, you know, like, as far as comedic chops, you know, you're not getting a lot there.
No, it's great. So a show with 6 main characters, 2 are funny. Must be a great show, though.
Well, some of them don't have to be funny if they're playing off the other funny people.
I think all 3 dudes are funny.
I'm not a big Friends
I'll
guy.
say it. I'm not either. I have it on mute.
I mean, it's probably the best way to watch it.
Well, it's because we're recording, honestly. I will say I had it on the sound earlier, but, you know, it would be weird if I had sound playing in the background.
So,
But for this tournament, though, it might, you know, if I was ever going to play Friends during a recording, it'd be this. Anyways, back to you. Sorry.
It would be. I mean, and even to look at that side of the bracket, like as Ben and I agreed, Sia did not, that Curb just runs away with that side of the bracket. It beats Friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that for sure.
The show
And
that
for
you
the
didn't
record-
want to include in the bracket, Sia, Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So here's the thing, though. I don't have Friends emerging from that bracket either. I believe mine was How I Met Your Mother that ends up.
No, you had Community coming out of that top part of the bracket. So let's break this down into 2 separate sides of this bracket to see what gets to the Elite 8. I'm guessing it's going to end like, I mean, Parks and Rec versus Seinfeld. You're putting 2 of my 2 favorite shows together. Seinfeld's going to move on. And even though I don't love Big Bang Theory, I have it winning 2 rounds pretty easily. And then it gets beat.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this comes down to like Scrubs or Cheers. Like for
On,
me,
on,
it's
the on the bottom end, but on the top
right. For
end,
me, it's
so.
Seinfeld all the way. For me, it's Seinfeld all the way, and on the bottom, right? Am I reading this right? And for me, it's who gets there. For me, it's Scrubs. Is it possible for Scrubs and?
Yeah.
Yes, for me, it's Scrubs and Cheers to see who gets to Seinfeld. That's what I got here.
See, the committee did this all right because I have the 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds all getting to their proper spots here with the 1 seed winning. I would have Scrubs over Cheers though.
Well,
so it's going to be Big Bang, Full House here if they both win. Oh, that's Full House all day. Sorry, buddy. Your Big Bang's going down. Nickelback is going home.
I think you guys are underrating Wonder Years a little bit. I still think they're going to lose to Full House, but I think Wonder Years has more of a shot than you think. But
all right, but if they let's say they get, like, who do you take? Just who do you think the fan vote will vote of Big Bang versus Full House?
Big Bang.
Big Bang.
And I think it's somewhat decisive because, to your Nickelback point, I think there are some people who really have a hardline opinion, like I hate Big Bang Theory, but I think the majority are like, yeah, that's a pretty funny show.
I don't know. I think it leans the other way. I think the majority are like, that's pretty bad, but there's a small group of people, 20% of the people out there, they're big Big Bang people.
Yeah, but I just feel like people are going to look at Full House at the same time too, and like
it's nostalgia though. Like I if it's people in my age, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, so we'll see. But I think it's going to get that nostalgia vote.
I mean, I don't care either way because they're getting trounced by Seinfeld.
I think we're looking at Full House versus. Oh wait, no, that's in the other bracket. Anyways, all right.
Yeah, it would be Seinfeld versus Full House to see who gets.
Oh yeah, that's
the
no
Elite
shot.
8.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So then we'd have Seinfeld versus Scrubs. Seinfeld beats Scrubs and joins. What did I have? I had Seinfeld, Arrested Development, and The Simpsons as my 3 of my final 4 through the shows. What would be your final 4, Chris?
I probably should have. I have looked at all the rest of the brackets. I think between Modern Family and Fresh Prince and The Simpsons in that bracket, who's the 4 seed in this bracket?
I know, but South Park's the 5 seed.
Yeah.
News Radio is the 4 seed. Sorry.
I think I'm a Modern Family guy. I'm gonna go chalk in that conference. I agree with Sia. How I Met Your Mother is going to have a strong fight in this Midwest. Cosby Show, that's a controversial one. Community's great. I'm gonna go. Oh man, what's the 5 seed in there? Curb. Oh wow. Okay, for me, this is Curb or How I Met Your Mother. That bracket, like that's what that comes down to. And then in this one, as I go through this, Family Matters. Well, we might have a 16-1 upset there. That's The Office for me. Who's the 3? Yeah, Family. I'm with you. I think Family Guy's a little overrated. Golden Girls. Yeah, this is for me. It's The Office, Curb, Modern Family. The other 3 winners besides this one.
And we'll get to the East in the next episode, but this bottom part of the East bracket, the one that the Office is on, is a fucking murderer's row of shows.
Yeah, dude. I love Workaholics.
And I love 30
Eastbound and Down.
And
Man.
King of the Hill, which is amazing. And also coming back.
And then Family Guy, like, who's just going to put up a fight. Like, you're right. The bottom half of the East might be the most loaded section. Like, I actually think the West overall is pretty deep if you were just looking at the brackets, but the bottom part of that East is really strong.
And Frasier has a nice path there. I did the seeding, but I didn't do the allocations here, so this is not a setup by me.
That is true. You sent me your 1 seeds, 2 seeds, 3 seeds, 4 seeds, and I made the matchups. I basically just took whoever the 1, 1, 1, 1, when put those together, because that's the sort of effort I bring to this.
Man, 7-10 matchup in the East. 30 Rock versus Workaholics. Put the kids to bed.
Well, 30 Rock is just misseeded. It should be like a 3 seed.
That's what I mean. That is loaded, man.
Yeah, 10.
Poor Alf.
Alf making the list is a little ridiculous. That was one of those smaller conference teams that was like a 7 seed and just ran through their conference tournament.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciated how you did want to stick Elf on as the 15 seed, but at every turn you tried to get Brooklyn Nine-Nine kicked out of this bracket.
Yes, mea culpa there. Oh, Chris, I assume you've seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh,
I hadn't.
I'm a fan.
So now I've caught up and I realize how incredibly funny that show is.
Yeah, I'm a fan. Is it on here? Did you make it? Is it in here?
It's
Yeah,
on
it's
here.
a 15. Okay. It's playing How I Met Your Mother in the first round. I would take Brooklyn Nine-Nine over How I Met Your Mother. I think it's funny. It's by far the best teen seed in this entire tournament. Like, of all the teens, I think it's the best, but I don't know if it's going to beat How I Met Your Mother. No, it's not going to beat How I Met Your Mother.
Right. I'm with you, though. It's in the conversation, and that's wild. That might be our Princeton. We got to figure out where our Princeton is.
That's it.
That's what
I would love to see it. Love to see it in the first round. And maybe How I Met Your Mother is not quite as popular as everyone seems to think it is. We'll see about that. Anyway, Chris, thanks for jumping on, man. This was awesome.
This was a lot of fun. I need to keep me updated. I can't wait to listen to this. I need to know who wins. I want to do sitcom characters next. Thank you guys for having me. This is great.
All right, Sia, thank you once again for doing this bracket. Again, everyone bully Sia if you don't agree with this bracket. I think that's the
Thanks to the committee. Thanks to the committee for all their hard work.
Yes, you can bully me at Sia Nejad. Please feel free.
Will you be defending yourself in the comment section? Don't be that person, but it's like hilarious if you are that person.
No, I have in this case, I think I have to be that person because of the content we're producing for this. It'd be one thing if I just like put my opinion out on Twitter and I just let it go. But because we're doing this, I feel like I'm going to be more than happy to defend myself from all the bullying.
All right. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME on Twitter, where I will have the matchups that you can vote in. You can also find those down in the description of the podcast and video. Smash the like and sub to Mayo Media Network while you are here as well. Help us out because that would be awesome. Anyway, I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!